This is Maurice Jones-Drew, and you're listening to the What's Bruin Show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA, fight, fight, fight.
You're listening to the What's Bruin Show, part of the What's Bruin Show Network, with your hosts, Jake Merrifield, Bill Shirley, Jamaal Artis, and Mike Regalado, bringing you anything and everything UCLA sports. And now, it's time for the What's Bruin Show.
Well, hello and welcome to What's Bruin. I am your host, Jake Merrifield, and this is a WB2, the game review for UCLA's victory, their first Big Ten victory. A big victory for the Bruins, 35-32. Could have been 42-32, but all's well that ends well with a fair catch. The Bruins beat Rutgers on the road. And certainly, it's a lot easier to do one of these shows. It's a lot easier to talk about the Bruins, and you just feel better about the Bruins when they get a win. And they've been few and far between the season. So congratulations to UCLA football for notching their first Big Ten win against the Scarlet Knights. And we can enjoy it for the next couple of weeks. Nothing like going to the bye week with a victory under your belt. So a lot of good things to feel for the Bruins tonight, even if the overall goals of the season are still, unmet. Even if, we've been very disappointed with how it's gone so far. Tonight's not a day for disappointment. It's a day for having some fun with it and a little bit of celebration there, because the Bruins certainly performed like it for the most part. Lots of things to quibble about, which I'll get to in a minute. But also you have to say the bad luck of this team, the poor play of this team on offense, and just kind of the bad vibes of this team in so many different regards are put away for a day with a game in which they pretty much control most of the way. 35-32. They don't let it slip away in the end, which is nice, unlike last week. And just a lot of good feelings about the Bruins today, and let's savor that for the weekend at least, right? Before we start thinking about it again. But really, like I said, we got a few days to savor it, so feel free, enjoy it. It's nice. It's a good win for the Bruins. Period. End stop. There you go. It's the What's Bruin Show on the What's Bruin Show Network. Thank you for your support. I, of course, am Jake Merrifield, and you can follow us on Twitter at What's Bruin Show, on Instagram as well, at What's Bruin Show. Email is what'sbruinshow@gmail.com. You can subscribe on the Substack or on the Patreon for just about $2 a month.
$2.
Maybe a little bit more. what'sbruinshow@gmail.com, what'sbruin.substack.com, patreon.com/what'sbruinshow, or just what'sbruinshow.com, which I think I already said that. That's okay. Not too many whiskeys into this. I apologize for not bringing you the show earlier, but it was a busy day today, and I had to drive all the way across the county to go have a meeting about your Los Angeles Grizzlies, the official football team of the LA Sheriff's Department. But that's neither here or there. I did get to go and watch part of the wonderful USC loss while I was there with a couple of some very big USC fans. So got a little bit of Schadenfreude in the day as well. So that's always good. But anywho, that's why I'm getting a late start, and that's why this will be coming to you probably for most of you on Sunday morning as opposed to Saturday afternoon. You can also, I thought we'd get some extra calls in considering the Bruins won the game, but we only got a couple. Maybe one or two, maybe just one. But it's 805-399-4WBS, Second Reign of Troy, and we appreciate your support. Call into the show again if you have anything to say about this one, and we will put it on the air on the Tuesday show, which may or may not be a Mike solo show. We'll see how that goes. But with that being said, let's get into this Bruin victory, and like I said, savor it, enjoy it a little bit, because it's been a little bit few and far between this season. Fight! So after that brutal loss to Minnesota last week at the Rose Bowl, which are all kind of scratching our heads, and whether you want to blame the defensive and offensive laps at the beginning of the third quarter, whether you want to blame Deshaun Foster's coaching strategy down the stretch, whatever you want to point your finger at, the Bruins come away with the loss in that game when they were leading 10-0 at the half and had a lead late in the game. And it was very, very depressing, and just everybody was feeling it. And the optimism for this game against Rutgers, even though Rutgers was coming to this game very, very depleted, still a road game across the country. and you couldn't really take anything for granted. But the Bruins start the game well and end up leading 21-10 at the half, and then there's a little bit of tension in the second half as Rutgers makes a push in the third quarter, but the Bruins kind of put it away, and there's not really any suspense until the last half quarter of the fourth quarter, which we'll get to in a minute. But it really was, for the most part, the most comfortable game for the Bruins all season, right? And you have to give them credit for coming out in this game and really playing well from the get-go. The game starts with a touchdown drive for the Bruins, 11 plays, 75 yards, and that's not something that has been unusual for UCLA in the last number of games. I think I put up a tweet this last week about how the Bruins have scored on all four of their last four opening drives, 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals, I believe. And after that is where it all falls apart. But certainly this opening drive was just like that. They drive down the field, and Logan Loya gets a wonderful touchdown from Ethan Garbers right at the end of the score. It's aided by some timely third down conversions. Ethan Garbers is not really pressured on the drive at all. Tight Smokey Awatimalala comes back into the game and makes some contributions early, and he ends up having 5 receptions in this game for 55 yards, but none were more important than the one on that first drive that they score a touchdown on. But Logan Loya wide open in the end zone on a kind of little crosser there on the right side of the end zone, and Garbers hits him, and the Bruins take a 7-0 lead. Rutgers gets on the field and does a little storming of their own, 8 plays, 75 yards, and they surprisingly do most of their damage through the air in the first quarter. They only have 1 drive in the first quarter, and I think they throw for 60 and run for 12. But 8 plays, 75 yards for a touchdown. The first half really only had 7 drives in the entire half, and UCLA is able to put together touchdowns on 3 of their 4 drives. But after the teams exchange those touchdowns, it becomes a field position game for a little while. UCLA ends up getting the ball on the kickoff from Rutgers' touchdown on the 5-yard line because of a penalty. They drive 10 yards, 10 plays, they get to midfield, and then Ethan Garbers has, in a game in which he does everything, he ends up punting the ball and putting the Scarlet Knights at their 5-yard line, and then Rutgers is able to drive about half the field, and then they punt and put UCLA inside their 10-yard line. And so the teams are still filling each other out, and it's almost midway through the fourth quarter, through the second quarter at that point, right? And that's when UCLA really gets control of this game, because Ethan Garbers then orchestrates this 10-play, 91-yard drive from their 9-yard line, and it is capped big time with his 49-yard touchdown run, a cathartic run. It was a huge, he's just a baller play.
He's just a baller, man.
And it is a total team effort. He's getting blocks down the field. He has to do a couple juke moves. It was a fantastic, wonderful play that hopefully we'll watch again and again this season. Hopefully it's not the highlight of the season, but, for Garbers, certainly it was the highlight of the season so far. And this sequence is really what sets the tone for the game, because we talked about how Garbers punts the ball, pins Rutgers back inside their 5. Well, Rutgers gets the ball, and they drive all the way to midfield, and they have a 4th and 2, and Greg Schiano chooses to take not only just punt, but he takes a delay of game to give himself a 4th and 7 to give himself more room to punt so that he can pin UCLA back inside the 10-yard line. This comes in direct contrast to a few plays later when UCLA ends up with a 4th and 1 at the UCLA 18. And, there was so much controversy over the last week about whether Deshaun Foster should have gone for it at the end of the Minnesota game. And probably, like I said, certainly no to him, Madam, if he would have gone. It's understandable why he didn't, I guess. But he didn't go for it last week. This week he does early in the game, and it pays off. He converts the 4th and 1. Then a couple plays later, Ethan Garbers pays him back with a 49-yard touchdown run, and they gain complete control of the game there, right? But that little sequence, right, the Schiano punt along with Deshaun Foster choosing to go for it on 4th and 1 deep in his own territory, and then Ethan Garbers paying it off by engineering a long touchdown drive, capped with his biggest play, best play of the year by far, and a shocking play of the year, right? Just like a lightning bolt, he runs down the field and scores a 49-yard touchdown run from Ethan Garbers. And just that sequence put the game in the Bruins' hands from that point forward. Certainly at the end of the game, there was a little bit of shenanigans in which the Bruins and Rutgers were kind of, jockeying, and then there was a point at which the Bruins could have given that up. They ended up not doing that, thankfully. But the Bruins were in control of this game from that point forward, when that punt sequence with Schiano and then the touchdown drive that gives them the 14-7 lead. Rutgers is in chase mode from that point forward. And now we are deep into the second quarter, where now we're into middle eight territory, right? Garbers has that big touchdown run with something like 2.5 minutes left or something like that. Rutgers gets the ball back, and they drive down the field, take a minute and a half, and they actually score a field goal. They stall on their drive. And then UCLA, with about a minute left on the clock, ends up driving the field to score another touchdown. And on that drive, it's 7 plays for 75 yards. It only takes 48 seconds. They get a huge play from Loya. They get a huge play from Keegan Jones. Where'd he go? And then TJ Harden gets one of his highlights of the year on an angle route that they took advantage of a couple times in the game. And all of a sudden, it is 21-10. UCLA, there's like 20 seconds left in the half, and they're going in halftime with a big lead and their most points scored during the year so far. And all the offensive statistics are wonderful because they really only have like 3 drives, and all of them are pretty 4 drives. All of them are pretty good. Even the punt drive was a 10-play drive, for goodness sake. So arrows pointing up at the half for UCLA. A lot of things to be optimistic about. And, it was kind of like the LSU game, in which they did a lot of wonderful things in the first half, but now they're going into halftime up by 11 points. Kind of like last week when they went into the half up by 10 points. And then the only question was, and I put out a tweet at halftime for the Bruins, and it really was what was on my mind. It was, check. UCLA football has surpassed this game high point total 17 by halftime. Check. Coach Foster showed big balls going for it on 4th and 1 from his own 20, in direct contrast to the Schiano punting to win from his own 50. Check. Garbers has a cathartic first half performance with a huge TD run. Check. EB's BO has been decidedly less stinky, producing past the opening drive for the first time in a month. Check. And then the final part of the tweet, final boss, don't get trucked in the second half, and then a little bit of prayer emoji. And that's really what we were worried about for the Bruins at that point. They had firm control of this game, just like they had control against the game against Minnesota, although in the Minnesota game, you can say there was a lot of missed opportunities for them in that first half. They should have had a bigger lead. Certainly, it should have at least been 14-0. In this game, they really, scored when they needed to score, I think. And 21 points in the first half, obviously the highest point total of the year already at half. Certainly the highest point total for the half, right? This goes without saying. So they had looked a lot better on offense at that point. They had almost doubled up Rutgers on yards, 300 to 172. They were out rushing Rutgers 76-51 with a higher rush average. They were out passing Rutgers by a 2-1 margin, 224 to 121. On third down, they were very good, 4 for 6. Rutgers only 1 for 3. They were 1 for 1 on fourth down. They ran 12 more or 14 more plays than Rutgers at that point. And they had held possession for 19 minutes out of the 30 minutes possible in that first half. No turnovers, and they only had 1 punt that pinned Rutgers back and inside their 5. So absolutely UCLA's game at the half. But the big question mark was, how were they going to play coming out in the second half, which had been so disastrous for UCLA in a few of these games in the last stretch?
Go Bruins.
Go Bruins. I'm happy that UCLA won.
And when UCLA comes out in the second half, it is a little bit rough, as it has been for so many games this season. Rutgers scores 9 points in a row. Could have been 10, but Schiano wants to go for 2 on his touchdowns for some reason. Rutgers comes out, gets the ball, goes 5 quick plays for his touchdown, 75 yards. And Kyle Mononga is a freaking beast in the second half with, I think he had 3 touchdowns or something. Unbelievable from that guy. But Rutgers comes out and scores quick. UCLA, typically with their opening second half drive, goes backwards, 3 and out, -3 yards, gives the ball right back to Rutgers. Rutgers drives down the field, and the UCLA defense stiffens up a little bit, holds them to a field goal at least. So now we're in a 21-19 game at that point. Probably should have been 21-20 if Schiano just freaking kicks an extra point. But it's 21-19, and the thing I did at that point was I tweeted on the What's Bruin account, oh my God, a score would be great here, right? And guess what? 2 plays later, UCLA pays that off. They reassert themselves in this game as Keegan Jones takes a pass down the sideline. And all of a sudden, the Bruins are up 28-19. and they force a punt, and then they score another touchdown, 10 plays, 70 yards, and it's just, party time in New Jersey. Ethan Garber's engineers a great drive that is capped very fittingly with a big touchdown reception from Jalen Berger, the hometown kid.
This is a tasty burger.
So with about 12 minutes left, UCLA is now up 35-19, and really they just need to hold on to the end here. And there is a little bit of, like I said, a little bit of shenanigans. Rutgers ends up scoring on another long drive, 6 plays, 75 yards. They get a couple chunk plays down the field, and put a little bit of pressure on UCLA. Now it's 35-25. UCLA comes down. They miss a field goal in which they jump off sides, for Christ's sakes, turning out like a 50-yard field goal into a 55-yard field goal for some goddamn reason. I don't know why at that point. If you're Deshaun Foster, he's been aggressive the whole game. In that situation, once you get the false start, I probably would have punted and make Rutgers drive down the field. But Rutgers gets the ball at midfield, almost at midfield, and then they end up throwing an interception to Brian Addison, making another huge play for the Bruins this year. Love that big, giant, tall safety back there in the Bruins' defensive backfield. And that should have been the end of the game, except for the Bruins being a little overly aggressive, trying to kill the clock. They get the ball back with about 5 minutes left on the clock, and they have a drive that goes about 8 plays, but they have a 3rd and 5 at the Rutgers 37, for goodness sakes, with 3 minutes and 37 seconds left. And at this point, I'm sorry. I know that it's good to be aggressive and all that stuff, but you have a 3rd and 5. You have 2 downs inside Rutgers territory to try to get a first down. Just run the ball. I know you don't run the ball very well. I know you suck at running the ball, but at that point, it's better for you to make Rutgers use up the time rather than give them an opportunity to get the ball back. And instead, Garbers is sacked. He loses yards. Rutgers gets the ball back. They drive down the field for a touchdown. Then we have this whole exchange where you have to have this stupid onside kick. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know if this is a good thing or bad thing for Deshaun Foster, but he reads the press clippings, I guess, in the interim of this week and looks at how his coaching decisions have been second guessed. And he goes for it early, which is good. But at the end of the game, him and Bieniemy are probably a little bit too aggressive, which is bad. And it's just just take a holistic approach and look at it from that regard. Don't, have this chip on your shoulder, I guess. I don't know. I didn't like the end of game management, which I thought if they were, and look, I applaud Foster for being aggressive at the beginning of the game and really taking the big lead that they had. But as you get to the end of the game, they have this final drive other than the victory formation drive that they have. And they actually get Schiano to use all of his timeouts right up before the, terrible play where Garbers fumbles. But you have a 3rd and 5. You're inside Rutgers territory. They've used their final timeout. There's 3.5 minutes left on the clock. And I just think at that point forward, you can run another 30 seconds off the clock just with your 3rd down to 4th down play. If you run the ball, play it conservative, and if you get 4 yards, maybe you choose to go for it on 4th and 1 and just kill the game right there. If you get stuffed or whatever, then you can punt, put him into very negative territory. You already executed that earlier in the game when you pinned him inside the 5. And then at the very least, they have no timeouts. They have to drive the entire field and score. I get 2 scores out of it, right? Instead, they drop back. There's a fumble. Worst case scenario, Garbers turns the ball over at midfield. They're able to drive the field, score a touchdown, and then they're in the onside field kick mode. And look, to give this the kind of the glossiest, rosiest outcome, you have to say that, well, this is one of the things we knew was going to happen going into the season. Deshaun Foster is going to learn on the job. And so did he learn a valuable lesson last week? Yeah, I think he did, right? He decided that, it's better to take chances and bet on your players and take the high probability odds in a game when you can take them, the 4th and 1 inside your own territory. Look, let's just go for that and get it. And then, they end up getting the biggest play of the season off of that drive when he has the faith in his team. In stark contrast to Schiano doing the delay of game punt, right, to the Bruins right before that sequence. That's something that I think Deshaun Foster's maybe learning what his actual style is, right? He's maybe he's going to be a little more of that going forward, and that's probably speaks well in his favor. But Also, as an experienced head coach, you have to, at the end of the game, also take the total context involved. You've got mission accomplished on that drive when you've gotten Rutgers to use all their timeouts. So now use up all the time you can. The play clock is is what you want to exhaust at that moment, even if you're going to give up possession, I think, right? And make Rutgers drive the entire field. Because you're up 2 scores. You're not up 1 score. Like, it's not like last week when 1 score is going to put you into trouble. You were hoping that you'd only give up a field goal last week against Minnesota. You end up giving up a touchdown, big chunk play and all that stuff. But it's a different situation this time, right? And that's what, in my opinion, was the big kind of gaffe at the end of the game. And though I am fully expecting that Foster every week is kind of learning as he goes. And so maybe next week, I think this week, I'm a little rambly here, but this week was a little progress from last week. Maybe next week will be a little progress from this week. Hard to complain, though, when they end up getting it done. They get the Brandon Brazell onside kick at the end, which goes for a touchdown, but for the Logan Loya fair catch call. And it's like, I'm not mad at nobody on any of this, but it sure would have been nice if they would have counted that, because there's nothing better than a onside kick for a touchdown, which UCLA has a treasured history in that against Northwestern in the Sun Bowl. It made the Godfather Bendat's daughter Francine cry, both Northwestern alums at that game. I didn't go because my wife didn't want to let me go, and the Godfather still blames me for that. But any time I can bring up a nice reference to Brandon Brazell taking 2 onside kicks to the house with his long, skinny-ass body strutting down the field for 14 points at the end of a game to seal it. I love that. In this game, we almost got that, but it's okay that we didn't. The Bruins still win 35-32, and first Big Ten win, and we should be happy with that, at least for this week.
UCLA! UCLA! Fight, fight, fight!
Go Bruins!
I'm happy that UCLA won.
So, wow, I thought that we were going to have to retire the baller segment.
Straight baller.
Just because it's been so rough for UCLA football and UCLA football's offense this year so far. But in this game, you score 35 points. You get a big win. You got UCLA defense, even though it didn't probably play as well as it wanted to in this game, it got plenty enough stops when it needed to, and there were still some straight-up baller performers in there. But we're going to take a few minutes to celebrate some of these guys that had big-time games, and I'll start with the ones I don't have sound drops for. Titus Mokiao Atemalala coming back, 5 receptions, 54 yards, big plays early in the game to put them into good position. Quasi Gilmore coming back after getting kicked out last game, 4 receptions, 21 yards. There were 8 Bruins with the reception in this game, so it was very, very good. Bryce Pierre, the rest of the tight ends, along with Malika Matavao, who was one of the biggest receivers in this game, kind of Garber's safety blanket in this game. Absolutely, all those guys.
He's just a baller, man.
Just a baller, man.
Straight baller.
All those dudes playing well, and we appreciate them on the Bruin offense. But for the guys they actually do have drops for, first of all, we got Mr. Jones. He had himself a game, 5 receptions, leading receiver in the game with 114 yards, 1 big, huge touchdown, long of 67 yards, and also added a couple of rushes in the game. Had the highest rushing average for the Bruins in this game with 5.5. It was only on 2 rushes, and one of them was 9 yards. But Mr. Jones just lit it up, especially I want to say in the second half of this game. But they would have been nowhere without him contributing this game. So absolutely just a baller, man.
Just a baller, man.
Logan Loya scores the first touchdown for the Bruins, and he has an awesome spin move that took a Rutgers player out of his cleats.
Straight baller.
Certainly he should have a lot to be proud of in this game, as well as the Bruin offensive line. I'm just going to say it right now. Everybody has shoveled dirt on these guys the entire season, and certainly they have not played well, and they are a big part of why the Bruins have not been able to execute EB's BO. But I would say the biggest reason the Bruins have not been able to execute EB's BO is because EB's BO stinks so bad. I would certainly put the lack of offensive performance this year more on the coaching than on any particular player or any particular group of players this year. With that being said, UCLA does not generate almost 500 yards of offense and 35 points in this game without a baller effort from the offensive line.
Straight baller.
And last but not least on offense, I mean, the baller of them all.
Straight baller.
He's just a baller, man.
Just a baller, man.
Is none other than Ethan freaking Garbers.
My name is
Ethan.
or just call me E.
You know, the last 3 weeks has been absolutely under fire. The entire season he's really been under fire since the struggles against Hawaii. And, you know, so much was made about Justin Martin being kind of nipping at his heels because of the performance at Penn State that yielded 3 points until the last, minute of that game. And, you know, I'll just point out that, you know, we chronicled this on What's Bruin Show after that game. The game plan changed with Penn State. Seems like Eric Bieniemy finally is adjusting to the needs of the team and is going with an offense that is trying to push horizontally first in order to allow them to get down the field vertically, and it has worked better in the last few weeks. They have had steady improvement from this offense. Penn State to last week against Minnesota, still not breaking through, and this week was certainly a breakthrough. Now, was some of that aided by the fact that Rutgers was missing a whole bunch of their skilled defensive players? Abso-freaking-lutely. Can they duplicate this in their next game when they travel to Nebraska? I have no idea. But for this game, they had a huge offensive output, and it was triggered by Ethan Garbers, their quarterback, and he had an absolutely spectacular game. 32 for 38, 383 yards, 4 touchdowns, 203 rating, 9 attempts, rushing attempts for 48 yards, 1 huge touchdown run, right? And it was the Ethan Garbers game. He had 1 horrible mistake at the end of the game with the fumble, and that, once again, I would pin on the coaching just from the freaking play call. Don't call a pass there, and you don't have a fumble in that regard. But Ethan Garbers, his name is Ethan. Just call him E.
My name is
Ethan.
or just call me E.
This is the guy that we thought we were going to get at the beginning of the season. I think we would have gotten this guy at the beginning of the season if Eric Bieniemy had his head on straight going into this season. And if this is the sort of offensive game plan they can generate, then I think that the Bruins have a fighting chance, at least in these games going forward, which we'll get to in a minute. But at least for this day, you know, October 19th in 2024, Ethan Garbers had, his best day as a Bruin, I would have to say, I think at this point. And it was a road victory, the first victory in Big Ten territory for the Bruins, 35-32 over Rutgers. And Ethan Garbers was the man of the hour, the man of the day. And hopefully right now they are flying back from the East Coast and having a good time. And I hope Ethan Garbers is sitting on this feeling good about himself.
Straight baller.
He's just a baller, man.
Just a baller, man.
But on the other side, the defense didn't have nearly as successful of a day versus the Scarlet Knights. The Scarlet Knights had a better average yards per play in this game. They passed the ball pretty effectively, which was a big surprise. They didn't run the ball well in the first half. In the second half, that really is what got them back into the game. 3 touchdowns for Monangai, and he certainly ended up going over 100 yards in the game, 5.6 yards average, probably the best rushing performance I can think of this season for a Bruin opponent. So there was a lot to be desired in this game for the Bruin defense, but I would say they still did enough to win the game, and it didn't have me questioning this Bruin defense at this point because they still made enough plays to win the game. They got a huge play out of Brian Aston at the end. The game starts with a big play by Oladejo, and then Carl Schwessinger has just been a revelation this whole season. He got a nice little feature during the game, which is wonderful. Probably their worst quarter was the third quarter. They give up those 9 straight points, and that's aided by a Bruin 3 now, by the way. But they end up getting an interception that should have sealed the game if the UCLA offense would have played it better. The UCLA coaching staff would have played it better. So I still have to give them some credit for this game, even though they gave up a pretty big point total relative to what they've been all season. But as far as the performance in this game, Oladejo starts the game off with a sack.
Just a baller, man.
Brian Aston with the big interception, another interception on the season is a big play.
He's just a baller, man.
And Carl Schwessinger, the leading tackler in the Big Ten, I don't know if he still will be after this game, but he still had 10 tackles.
Straight baller.
And that sequence where he pretty much forces a 3-and-out on Rutgers on his own, I want to say after UCLA has that big touchdown drive in the third quarter. That was as big of a drive from a young man as you'll see. 2 tackles on the quarterback right at the line of scrimmage pretty much. And that's what cued them the broadcast to do the little feature on him. But Schlesinger is just a super baller and another great linebacker in a long line of linebackers for UCLA in recent history. So just a great story, and let's just enjoy him while he is still playing hard as a Bruin. But bottom line, I'm just happy to have the baller segment back. It's been so depressing for over a month. It's been such a shame. Oh my God, it's been a shame.
What a shame.
And it's good to be able to celebrate some of these Bruin performances on the field again with no reservations. And that's what this game really was, a game where, a couple things could have gone better for the Bruins, but overall, you're just like happy with the result, and let's just not worry about it too much because we don't have to worry about a game for a couple weeks.
Didn't you say in your resume that you did 4 years at UCLA?
Yes. Technically, if you consider Bel Air an extension of the campus, which everybody does.
Bruin Doomsday fans getting humiliated, and you know what? I'm not feeling sorry for them. Nope, not one bit.
So coming out of this game, you have to think about, what are the prospects going forward? We'll get to the future, the rest of the schedule in just a minute. But, just to kind of put a button in this game, I should say, think about the Bruins' offensive performance and the different season highs they had. This is the first game they were over 50% on third down. They're 7 for 13 in this game. I think the previous high, they were like 33% or something. It was ridiculous. Of course, the 35 points in this game doubles their previous high of 17, more than doubles it, right? 2 times their previous high. That raised their actual average from 12.5 points per game. That's points scored by the offense. I took out Addison's touchdown against Oregon. They were averaging 12.5 measly goddamn points per game. And in this one game, they raised it by almost 4 points. Now they are at 16.2 points per game, which is still pretty darn pathetic, but it's much better than 12.5. They're actually averaging over 2 touchdowns a game, people. Can you imagine how ecstatic we must be with that?
Go Bruins!
I was actively rooting for UCLA today, and it makes me feel dirty.
Additionally, we also talked about Garber's big game, 10.1 yards per attempt, 383 yards, 4 touchdowns, 203 quarterback rating, 478 total yards for this offense, which is obviously a season high for them as well. 8 players had a catch in this game, which is, I think, a season high. They had 35 minutes of possession in this game, which is also very good. They were 2 for 2 in the red zone. Just not a whole lot of things to complain about with this Bruin offense other than the strategy down at the end of the game, which once again I think is a evolving thing, a work in progress for Deshaun Foster and his staff, which, you got the win, so I guess we'll forgive it for this week. But really looking forward, you have to say that, so much of this season has been, we can't imagine them winning another game with as pathetic as this offense has been for most of the season. It's not what we envisioned going into the season because we thought they had guys that could put points up on the board, whether it's this guy or this guy, or the bevy of receivers that they have, right? Or Ethan Garber. His name's Ethan. Just call him E.
My name is
Ethan.
Just call me E.
We thought we'd be playing those drops all season long, but instead they come into this over-complicated offense that's trying to take too much, not carving out, not adjusting to what the talent dictates or what their strengths are, really, and trying to plug a square peg into a round hole. And it's taken them half the season to adjust. But if this is the adjustments that they're going to make, then maybe they have a chance going forward in the season. Up until, Game 7, they had not broken the 20-point barrier. Well, we can't say that anymore, right? They put up 35. And they put up 35 in a fashion that seems, at least to my eyes, duplicatable, right? Their running game sucks. That's okay. But the difference that they've had in the last few weeks is Eric Bieniemy has finally started to try to push it horizontally a little bit. They had a couple more wide receiver screens in this game that were very, pretty much productive. I think one got stuffed, but a couple of them were very good. He has tried to compensate for the lack of a running game with the quicker passes, which I think is very much to the benefit of the Bruins. If this is a year in which, I don't know, maybe their offensive line coach is not very good, maybe their offensive line is taking a setback with personnel, they've shuffled around a little bit, but if they're not going to be able to run block enough for Jones and Berger and Harden, then they need to compensate for that with things like bubble screens, trying to push the edges of the offense so then they can get upfield. And that's what they did in this game. They did so much damage down the sidelines, but it started close to the line of scrimmage for the most part. And then when that opens up, then they're able to gash them down the middle of the field with the tight ends. And it was kind of all working today for the most part, even if the running game still wasn't something spectacular. You can make up for that. Also, Bieniemy ran some more play action in this game. I'm looking forward to seeing what the stats are on PFF. I don't think they have them up yet. I'll check in a minute. But I just remember very clearly there was a play where it's a running down. They have I-backs in there, and they end up going play action after that. And they don't get a touchdown like they got last week with Jamaal Khachatryan, but they get 9, 10, 11, 12 yards off of a play action pass to the fullback, halfback, and then I think ends up the halfback comes out of the backfield and catches a pass and goes like 9 yards. I think it was Jones back there. But that's the kind of stuff that you need to see in order for them to have a productive offense. Just what they've been doing, what they were doing in the first 5 games or so, it was just not putting them in any sort of advantage. They're trying to throw the ball down the field, 5-step, 7-step drops. People are not open down the field. They can't block that long. And they were just taking themselves out of so many of these drives with these unproductive drives. We're going nowhere. And if that has changed, if they now can manufacture some offense, well, then everything's on the table again as far as like them being competitive in these games. Are we saying they're going to win all of these rest of these games? Absolutely not. But at least they give themselves a fighting chance. Up until pretty much, this week, you could argue that, the first half against LSU, they showed a little bit of potential. The opening drives of the last 4 or 5 games, they showed a little bit of potential. But it wasn't amounting to any, to very much cumulatively, because by the end of the game, they're putting up 13 points, 17 points, 17 points. It's just not enough. It's not enough. That's not a viable offense. This game showed us that they can get it together and put up enough points to be competitive in these games. Now, I know Rutgers was down a bunch of players in this game, but even if they have their edge rushers there, UCLA was getting rid of the ball fairly quick in a lot of these plays, and I still think it's going to be something that allows them to be more productive against other teams in the Big Ten than they had been up to this point. And honestly, compared to what they faced in the first half of the season, the level of competition is down. It's not tremendously down. These are still some pretty good teams. When we talk about the Nebraskas and the Washingtons, Iowa and USC, they're all decent teams at least. They've all played better than the Bruins for most of the season, but they're not Oregon, Penn State, LSU, and what's the team I'm leaving out there? Indiana, right? And by the way, Indiana just beat the living crap out of Nebraska today, even more so than they beat the Bruins, right? So what I'm saying is that when you look at the schedule going forward, if the Bruins can keep the offense going in this particular way, they're going to have a fighting chance in these games. And so another victory would not surprise me at all. Last week going into this game, I'm like, are these guys going to win another game before Fresno? And even Fresno, I'm not going to hold my breath. Now, I am much more optimistic that of the next 5 games, which are all, in my opinion, coin flips, the Bruins win a couple of those coin flips. So instead of the ceiling being 2 wins, 3 wins, now maybe it's 4 or 5 wins. Who knows? If they get extremely lucky and extremely hot, my goodness, maybe they can actually, finish the season strong. I'm not even going to mention anything like postseasons or anything like that. But, we're not there yet, of course. But it's not completely off the table anymore because now they've shown that they can do it, right? And Rutgers is far and away probably the worst team they have played this year since Hawaii. I'll absolutely acknowledge that. But they caught Rutgers on a bad day and they beat them. But they dominated Rutgers, and Rutgers was lucky to be in this game at the end. Nebraska just got murdered, and the Bruins now have a bye week to try to work on the stuff that's worked for them. And I know they're going to go on the road to Nebraska, but it's not like that is some sort of impossible mission to win at Nebraska. Nebraska is a team with a 5-2 record, but it's not like they've really beat anybody that's really any good. They beat Colorado. That's the best team that they've beaten this season so far, I want to say. And Colorado, even though they have a gaudy record, whatever. You can think what you want about Colorado. But other than that, they have wins against UTEP, Northern Iowa, Purdue and Rutgers. Their losses are to pretty much the only good teams they faced, Illinois and Indiana. Okay? They're going to play Ohio State next before they play UCLA. So you got a little bit of a body blow theory there too, right? They're probably going to get their asses handed to them by Ohio State, who's still smarting from their loss against Oregon. And then they come in to host UCLA before playing SC. They're going into a bye week for that game, but they're playing UCLA before taking on SC, which even though SC is fading as well, right? They're in the middle of a sandwich of two games that are huge games for them in their mind. So the Bruins absolutely can sneak in there as an underdog and steal something if they play as good as they play today. There's no guarantee they will. But you're telling me they don't have a chance at that game? F off, they do. And so we should absolutely think optimistic thoughts for the next 2 weeks and hope they come out there and play a good game in Nebraska in front of those very polite, wonderful Nebraskan fans. Why not give them another loss to think about? That's what I'm hoping for. And then after that, the UCLA plays Iowa. Okay, Iowa's pretty much the same as freaking Nebraska, right? Their wins this season: Illinois State, Troy, Minnesota, Washington. Okay, they kicked the shit out of Washington. That's a great win for them. Washington's a little better than we thought, but they got beat by Ohio State. Pretty much the only good team they've played this season. They got beat by Iowa State, right, in a big rivalry game. That was a big game for them. And then they lose to Michigan State today, who is absolutely mediocre. They end up losing that game 32-20. So they're going to be smarting, but they're going to be, they have Northwestern and Wisconsin in the next couple weeks to try to get well. But the one thing the Bruins have in their favor, especially while they're sitting on a 2-win season, is they're going to be overlooked. Iowa is traveling out to the Rose Bowl. The Bruins have not had the best home field advantage in the last couple of years, but still, Iowa's got to come out here. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Iowa fans, but that's a game that, the Bruins will be able to be in that game if they play well. Iowa's got a great defense. Their offense is okay, whatever. It's better than it was last year, but still not some juggernaut. So as long as all things being equal, if the Bruins offense can put up a couple points, they'll be in the game. That's all I'm saying. They'll be in the game. So once again, another coin flip there. The Bruins scoring, 12 points a game, they're going to lose every game. The Bruins scoring somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 points a game, well, they're going to be in every game, going forward, because none of the opponents are that good. At Washington, that's going to be a tough game for them, but Washington's so up and down too. First year under Jed the Fish, that's a game that I think of all the games left on their schedule, quite frankly, I think that's the most difficult game because they have Iowa and SC at home and Fresno State as well at Nebraska. I think that they're a team that's, better than Rutgers, but that much better than Rutgers? I don't know. The SC game, we just saw them lose to freaking Maryland today. They're a team, and all bets are off with the rivalry game. That's a game that it's at the Rose Bowl, so I like the Bruins' chances to be competitive in the game. Let's see how it goes, right? And by then, who knows how the Bruins are playing at that point, okay? And then the Fresno State game, who the fuck cares? I hate the goddamn Bulldogs. I wish we didn't have to play this game. But I think that depending on how the rest of the season goes, that's going to tell me how the Bruins are going to play in that game. Are they just going to mail it in because they hit another losing streak? Or have they built some momentum and they go into that game with some firepower and then they, are able to put the Bulldogs away? So, look, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. The Bruins should have won last week against Minnesota. It's a sin that they didn't. They should be sitting on a record of 3-4 right now with a chance to improve on that. Okay? But they didn't. They're 2-5. They have 5 games left, all of which, in my opinion, are absolute coin flips. The reason I'm a little more happy about this than I was last week is, well, I didn't think the Bruins would win more than 2 games, considering how broken the offense was. But now, like I said, if they could just put together a semi-competent offense, then this is a team that should be competitive in all these games. And so you talk about a coin flip, right? That's where we're at. If you win a couple more of those coin flips, then you can start to sell the fact that Deshaun Foster is, building what he's building. They're no longer the rotten, husk of a formerly pretty darn good football program, just kind of spinning its wheels. You can start to build off of things like that, right? But, don't get too happy. It's 1 win. They still have a miserable record. They're now at least out of the cellar of the Big Ten, which is wonderful. There's no longer an argument as to who the worst Big Ten team is. It is now Purdue. Yay! I have a niece that's going to Purdue right now, and I'm glad to say that I no longer have to argue with her over who the worst team in the Big Ten is. Of course, who the next worst Big Ten team is? It's UCLA, it's USC, it's Rutgers, it's Maryland, it's Northwestern. A lot of crap in the Big Ten this year. But it's nice to be there with the company that we're with, I suppose. All right. I was actually a little sad that you guys didn't call after this thrilling Bruin victory. And, I say that semi-sarcastically, but I mean, given where we've been this whole season, this was a thrilling Bruin victory. I mean, there's so many fun big plays in this game, and all those big plays amounted to one goddamn call. 805, 399, 4WS, Sacramento Troy, and that one call is right here.
Not a comment. I just want to say congratulations to Deshaun Foster for winning his first Big Ten game. And I want to, give shouts out to Ethan Garbers, who I've been the biggest critic of and have given him all kind of crap on Twitter. This is Big Pooh Bear, by the way. We always chat back and forth, but I've been his biggest critic. Today, I didn't get to see the game, but I saw the highlights and I got to see the numbers. If you could play this way, you won't hear my mouth say another negative thing about you ever again. Go Bruins. Just beat everyone else. Just get to a bowl game.
My name is
Ethan.
Just call me E.
Okay, so we just got one call, but it was Big Pooh Bear, and that call was worth that's fine. I don't care if we would have got 15 calls. I'm glad the Big Pooh Bear called. And I tweeted him today on the What's Bruin Show account. I said, it takes a big man to admit what, the Big Pooh Bear was talking a lot about Ethan, and then Ethan comes in with a big performance, and he's not too proud of a man to say, hey, you know what? You did it this week, Ethan. Congratulations. And I want to say thank you for saying that, Big Pooh Bear. We really appreciate that, just as the What's Bruin Show and listening to what all the fans say. And I'm sure that Garber is going to appreciate getting some flowers for some of his biggest critics for sure. And, where we diverge in our opinions is I saw Ethan Garbers play well last year with an offense that he knew and an offense that was designed to allow him to be successful. Obviously he got dinged up a couple times and, that took him out of the game when he was playing early in the season under the pressure of having, freaking Dante Moore, this guy.
Go Bruins.
Hot in his tail. He kind of choked up a little bit, but I think that Ethan Garbers is a pretty good college quarterback if he is given the tools to be successful. And by tools, I mean an offense that is viable. And I don't think he had the offense that was viable in the first half of this season. Maybe that has changed, and maybe that will allow him to play better, but only time will tell, right? But with that being said, certainly going into this week, and I acknowledged on the last What's Bruin Show, there is an absolutely, very relevant argument for how long do you let Ethan Garbers play this season if the Bruins are just going to be turning in a 2, 3, 4 win season. When you have Justin Martinson there, who will be there hopefully next year, all things being equal, NIL and whatnot, and gee whiz. Not to say that it would lure Martin away without a whole lot of film out there for him. But the bottom line is, look, if Garbers plays like this, there is no question, right? He is the guy that will, keep the Bruins competitive and maybe lead the Bruins to some more victories this season. The Penn State game for Martin was a nice exhibition for that dude to show that he is capable of executing a game plan. And I think that he surprised us all. But the big change in that game was Eric Bieniemy's approach to the game plan. And he absolutely went to more quick hitting plays to minimize the deficiencies of the offensive line, to try to push the field horizontally before he tried to push vertically. And I think that absolutely was the right thing to do. And Martin was the beneficiary of that in the Penn State game, where he was relatively efficient compared to the previous freaking 5 games. But you see Garbers the last 2 weeks, and he has absolutely, I think, executed the new style of play calling better than what we saw Martin do against Penn State. And obviously, Martin's going against Penn State. The level of competition was raised up there too. I'm not saying that Martin can't play. I'm not saying that Martin couldn't execute well if he was put in there, if he needs to be put in there. But I think we firmly take the position that we think Garber should be playing until all is lost pretty much. And I'm glad that Ethan had this big performance. And I'm glad you called, Big Pooh Bear. And, much love to you, my friend. But as far as the rest of you, like, where's Dez? Where's Diego? Where's Nancy? Where's Mike and Mike? Goddamn father-son combination. They called my show every goddamn week for the last 6 weeks complaining about Bruin football. They're actually at a victory at Rutgers, and they can't call my goddamn show? Aaron from Riverside. Crawford. Crispy Bruin. What you don't understand is when the Bruins play a night game, it is very hard for me to put together a post game, including the calls. But the Bruins played at 9 goddamn a.m., and now I have all day to get these calls in and to get it into a nice big segment. I always get the nicest calls from Carrie. Carrie, where are you? And selfishly, I'm not probably going to be on the Tuesday show because I'm going to Lakers opening night, and it may just be a Mike solo show, and I'm going to have to put together those calls. If anybody calls, I hope he call, just to send to him, and hopefully he can put it all together and put it up on the feed. But anyways, whatever. I love you guys. I've done a post game. It's like 11:30 at night right now, and I've gone 50 minutes on the best UCLA post game show you're going to get. But I have to admit, I am a little disappointed that I didn't get more hotline calls tonight.
And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA. UCLA, fight.
Jake Merrifield made a lot of outstanding points.
What is happening here? Why are you taping them?
Well, because they got great banter. They jib-jab. Jib-jab. I use it for the car because my stereo's busted.
We have a lot of interesting things to say, so, you know.
Oh, shit. Well, I feel like the conversation we've been having in the last 5 minutes is a lot more interesting than the shit they're talking about on the radio.
All right, guys. So we have a couple weeks to enjoy it. UCLA has got their first Big Ten victory. UCLA is 2-5 on the season. Whoop-de-doo. But, hey, it's better to win your last one than to lose your last one. And we're heading into the rest of the season with at least a nice performance under our belt. So call the hotline before Tuesday. If you do, I'll put it into a package for Mike to put on there. I'm going to the NLCS tomorrow night, which hopefully will send the Dodgers to the World Series. If it doesn't, then I'm going to sell my Game 7 tickets for a fortune. So either way, win-win for me. I'm going to go to the I'm going to go to the Lakers opening night against Minnesota. Hopefully that is a fun game as well. Taking Molly, my daughter, to the NLCS. I'm taking Malcolm, my son, to the Laker game. So that should be a fun time. And so the next time I hear from y'all will be, or you'll hear from me, will probably be, a week or so. So call the hotline, 805-399-4WBS, Sacramento, Troy. Subscribe on the Patreon, subscribe on the Substack if you want to support the show for just a little bit more than the $2.
$2.
And if you don't support the show with your money, then just, follow us on the YouTube, follow us on the Instagram, follow us on the Twitter. That is help enough. And until the next time I talk to you, it's good to put away the doomsday bells for the season. They're not going to be winless in the Big Ten schedule. At least for now, for a few days, we get to revel in a Bruin victory. So till next time, thank you for listening, and go Bruins.
Good evening.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
That was the What's Bruin Show.
Try us tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
It's got to be in or out, Mom. In or out. Well, I need the door closed.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Dude, Brock, we play some ball on the West Coast.
The final word is boob.